Good afternoon. We are doing it live and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro. And just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Big rally in the financial markets today. Investors joining the chorus of congratulations for Republican President Donald J. Trump, who won the presidential election against Democrat Vice President Kamala Harris. In case you hadn't heard, Republicans also took control of the U.S. Senate. The final results impacting political leadership in the House remain to be seen. It was an exciting night being on the air here on 790 KBC with John Phillips and Randy Wang as we watched the results come in immediately. As it appeared President Trump was going to win, the financial markets moved higher. We saw a big jump in Dow futures, and already last night, cryptos rallied, with Bitcoin hitting all-time highs. Today, we saw the biggest post-election day jump in the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 128 years. Stocks saw a momentous trading session today with investor optimism over President Trump's presidential election victory, fueling the biggest post-election jump in more than 100 years. All three of the major averages, as a matter of fact, finished at record highs today. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 1,508 points. Yep, you heard me, 1,508 points, or 3.6%. A new record high close for the Dow at 43,730. It was, for those keeping track, the 41st record close of the year and the biggest post-election gain since November of 1896. The S&P 500 moved higher by 146 points, selling at a record high 5,929, and the NASDAQ ended higher by 544 points, or 3%, to a record high close of 18,983. And the Russell 2K Small Cap Index also moved up by 132 points. The Trump trade is on. In fact, the Trump trade is in overdrive following the president's election victory last night. Assets that had rallied in anticipation of the Trump win kept on moving higher today. The election day jump came a day after a winning election eve rally for the markets. The Dow jumped 427 points yesterday. The S&P 500 popped 70, and the NASDAQ surged 259. Bank stocks had a good day with the big dog on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, rallying today, in fact soaring, marking the biggest jump in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Goldman Sachs shares up about 13%. Gold dropping, meanwhile, losing more than $73 an ounce, the biggest one-day dollar loss in more than 3 years. Gold's decline coming in reaction to the stronger dollar today, in reaction to President Trump's victory and higher bond yields. According to some analysts, it's likely a short-term trade rather than a long-term trend reversal. Oil futures finishing lower today, posting their first loss in 6 sessions. We did see oil in New York dropping by 30 cents, $71.69 a barrel. And in London, the benchmark Brent crude moved to $75.66 a barrel. Nervous time in the Middle East with Prime Minister Netanyahu firing Defense Minister Gallant today, citing a lack of mutual trust during a time of war. Gallant will be replaced by Israel's foreign minister. The Wall Street Journal had an op-ed today that was titled, "In one day, two of the biggest breaks on Israel's Netanyahu disappeared," noting 2 significant constraints on Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's ability to shape security policy are gone, firing his defense minister, and Donald Trump winning the U.S. presidential election. President Trump widely believed to be less critical of Netanyahu's policies than his opponent, Vice President Harris. Meanwhile, Iran's currency fell today to an all-time low as President Trump clinched the victory last night, signaling new challenges ahead for Iran as it remains locked in the wars raging in the Middle East. The Iranian rial trading at 703,000 rials to the dollar. 703 rials to the dollar. Shares of Tesla soaring today. This as investors bet that EV maker and CEO Elon Musk will benefit from President Trump's return to the White House. Tesla shares moving higher. A lot of discussion today on what President Trump's reelection will mean for electric vehicles and electric vehicle mandates and so forth, as well as tariffs on foreign cars and other issues. I will discuss that later this hour with Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the host of the Total Car Score podcast. Closer to home, voters in L.A. are sick of runaway crime and that's been impacting businesses, including smash and grabs, shoplifting. The list goes on. Prop 36, which reverses part of Prop 47, and veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman defeating incumbent District Attorney George Gascon, both in the spotlight. I'll discuss that and more with a giant on the local business scene, and that is Mark Wilbur, founding member and former chairman of LA BizFed, head of Employers Group based here in Los Angeles, and former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the rally today, the election results, and the whole works. Joining us live now, the one and only Ben Stein for our occasional Frank and Stein conversation here. Ben Stein, of course, political and economic commentator, economist, attorney, actor too, famous for one of the most famous scenes in American cinema as the economics professor in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ben Stein, thank you very much for coming to the line on this epic day here today.
Always a pleasure, my dear friend. Always a pleasure. Always
your reaction,
well,
dear Ben Stein, to the big news today.
Well, I am happy that Mr. Trump won. I am happy because I think that we had entered an era in which the Constitution was under attack from many different directions, and the rights of the ordinary American citizen were being viciously attacked. The whole structure of government was crumbling because of failure to enforce laws, because of major collapse of important entities like the FBI, and a vengeance on the part of government against anyone who was critical of the Democrat Party, and to the point that the Constitution just did not seem to apply to people who were friends of the Democrats, and that was exactly what the Constitution is not supposed to be about. And we, I think, are taking a step backwards from socialism and from a world in which the Constitution would have been junked and scrapped. And in fact, there was quite a lot of talk by the Democrats that they thought the Constitution was outdated and it was time to get rid of the Constitution. And that is terrifying talk. That is just blood-curdling, terrifying talk.
You're live with Ben Stein for our occasional Frank and Stein conversation on this post-election day here. And, of course, President Trump faced a morass of legal issues. And how do you expect all this to wind down? I don't know if you've seen the reports today that said that special counsel are now in discussions with the Justice Department about how to close his 2 federal criminal cases against President-elect Trump. This is big news, and there are other cases still outstanding. In fact, he was even facing possible jail time later this month. What's your expectation here on how all this is going to unwind?
My expectation is it's going to be dropped slowly but surely. I don't think Mr. Trump will wind up spending more than an instant in jail or in prison. The whole thing was a phony meant to destroy his voter base. Didn't work. It backfired very strongly. And in fact, I think Mr. Trump emerged from it stronger than ever. It was a real triumph of, what shall I say, Democrat, small d, democratic vision of the founders of this country. The Jeffersons, the Madisons, the Hamiltons would have been proud of America today. America stood tall and said, people have law. We have laws, and the laws are meant to protect the innocent. The laws are meant to prosecute the guilty. The laws are not meant to put people in prison because they disagree with the ruling party. And thank God for the fact that we had a really great Supreme Court. Mr. Trump appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court, and that was an incredible blow for freedom and decency. And I have to say, I don't think any appointments to the Supreme Court have ever been more consequential than Mr. Trump's appointments. A giant triumph for people who believe in law, which, of course, I am a lawyer and I believe in that. That was a really wonderful day for America. That is a wonderful day. And it's a wonderful day for America. I think we're stepping back from an authoritarian way of ruling the government in terms of economic policy. I don't like and didn't like the idea that we were going to cut down on production of oil and other incredibly important resources. I mean, gee whiz, oil is everything in the world. Oil isn't a joke. Oil is incredibly important. It's incredible. It's incredibly important. I don't, somehow word got out among the dopey college student class in America that oil was a bad thing. That was an idiotic idea. Oil is vital. Oil is life and death. How this idea could have gotten hold on the college campuses of America that oil is somehow poison, it was just insane. And now I think we're back on the track. I mean, oil is what enables countries to prosper, to grow, to win wars. It's a great thing. And I'm very, very happy about the fact that we're going to put oil back up there where it belongs as a life-saving resource.
On the air live with the one and only Ben Stein. It should be noted, California 100 years ago, by the way, accounted for 25% of the world's oil production. So a lot of the wealth built here in Southern California was built on oil money. Just look at the Getty Center, which was built on Getty oil money. And, of course, the Hammer Museum there in Westwood, that big art collection. Dr. Armand Hammer, who headed up Occidental Petroleum, put all that together. Edward Doheny, who built a Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills, had Doheny Oil, who discovered oil here. So you're absolutely right to note all of that, and it looks like things will change on that front. And certainly there was a big contrast between the two presidential candidates on tax policy, where Kamala Harris basically promised to raise taxes. President Trump promises to continue the Trump tax cuts that were put into place when he was in office. And now with the Senate in Republican control, and we're still waiting for the final results in the House. How's his agenda going to look, you think, and this time around?
I think it's going to look pretty darn good. I am not a supply sider by any means, but I do believe that the idea of drastically raising taxes is not a good idea in periods of economic uncertainty. We are in a period of wild prosperity, but it's still always uncertain. And the idea of slamming on the brakes is not ever a good idea. Even in the most prosperous times in the history of America, 1937, a second Great Depression within the first Great Depression happened, and it almost cost us World War II. It's a very foolish idea to slam on the brakes on taxes at any time. Sometimes we do need a gradual increase, there's no doubt about that. But slamming on the brakes, no, not a good idea. It never has been. I doubt if it ever will be. I love the idea that we're going to have a government that believes that tax policy is supposed to be used to raise money to run the federal government, not to punish people.
On the air live with Ben Stein, and it just so happens in that famous scene that I referenced earlier where you gave that economics professor lecture in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you were talking about tariffs that were imposed back in the 1930s. President Trump, very high on tariffs. He believes in tariffs, which goes contrary to a lot of economists, and I think including yourself. But looks like foreign cars could be slapped with tariffs, and the president plans to use tariffs as a tool to achieve his goals. What do you think is going to happen this time around with tariffs?
I don't think tariffs are going to become a big economic tool for anyone. And what's interesting, I'm glad you brought that up, though, Frank. The rebound in the American automobile industry since we made it a national goal, a national priority, to have a thriving, booming auto industry has been wonderful, breathtaking. America makes the best cars in the world, dollar for dollar. Detroit iron is the best kind of iron there is. Great cars at great prices. And we want that to continue. We want America to be the leader for automobiles for the foreseeable future. Look, America is a giant manufacturing power. Let's make the most of it. It employs a lot of people. It makes a great product at a fair bargain price. It's an amazing thing. The American automobile industry should be loved and cared for and taken care of and nurtured. You're pushing me the wrong direction. And nurtured.
All right. And it looks like Elon Musk will be getting more love as far as automakers are concerned, given his support of President Trump. Let me ask you about this, and this is something that came up in the discussions leading up to the election. Economists have been saying, oh, yeah, the economy's great, but polls indicate that people aren't feeling that. As a matter of fact, and inflation certainly, I'm sure you would agree with this, is a huge factor. It was a huge factor in these results, and the Federal Reserve is set to meet tomorrow with another announcement expected, another rate cut expected, and they have been fighting inflation, of course, which hit a 40-year high in the last couple of years, and so we're going to be hearing more about this tomorrow. Ben Stein, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? You think the Fed will lower rates by another quarter percentage point? And what about what's happening on the inflation front now?
Well, the inflation front is a very hard fight. If you envisage World War I, an endless war with both parties fighting along a wide front, terrible casualties, terrible loss of life, but there was nothing that could be done about it until there was a giant breakthrough, and there hasn't been that giant breakthrough on inflation. The government, and this is both Republicans and Democrats, got this inflation ball rolling, and once that ball is rolling, it is really hard to stop. That's a gigantically important ball. You've got to bite the bullet, step in there, and stop the economy from running wild. Otherwise, despite the fact that people trust, and believe in President Trump, there's going to be more inflation and people are going to be suffering. We have got to bite the bullet. And believe me, I don't like it. My main asset in life is real estate, and it hurts me very badly as a real estate owner to see mortgage rates go up. I don't like it one bit. Something's got to be done, though. There's going to be some pain, no gain. The situation is dire, and there's no miracle. I mean, Mr. Mundell and Mr. Laffer thought they had to come up with a miracle in supply side. They hadn't, not even close. And nobody has any miracles. There are no economies. Don't work by miracles. The miracle that makes America great and the economy is a hard-working, intelligent labor force, very smart people, have absolutely great confidence in their own ability to get things done. That will happen again. Will it be some kind of technological breakthrough that makes it possible to produce this or that at a lower price? Maybe so. But we will eventually come out ahead by someone thinking up something which manufactures some product or service at a lower price. That has always been what America can do and will do. And please, Democrats, get out of the way. Get the train, get off the tracks, and let the train go highballing down the tracks.
On the Air Live with Ben Stein, and certainly the President Trump coming in at a critical moment in the world with the wars raging in the Middle East, and Iran threatening Israel, and Ukraine and Russia still at war, and now North Korean troops wearing Russian uniforms in the mix there as well. What are your thoughts about President Trump coming in and changes that we'll undoubtedly see in foreign policy here now?
We're going to see some big changes, I think, and I hope and pray the war doesn't spread in Europe or in Asia or in the Middle East. I think if we continue to supply Israel as well as we possibly can with anti-aircraft weapons, Israel will prevail, and Israel will be able to let this thing bounce off, and Israel will go on. But I don't think there's going to be any kind of miracle. There are no miracles where hate is so embedded in the mindset of the Iranians and the people who love them and worship them and follow along with them, where that kind of hatred is in the bones, in the actual bones of the haters in the Arab-hating states. There's no easy way out of that. But let's back up. That's what people thought about Egypt. That's what people thought about Saudi Arabia. But with Mr. Trump's extraordinary ability to get things done, we got out of those and moved forward with the Abraham Accords. It could happen again. If Mr. Trump gets in there and says, look, we have the most advanced military munitions and research facilities in the world. We're going to put them at the disposal of Israel. You'll never beat Israel. Why even try? Let's instead make peace. I think that will make a big, big difference. There's no, the Japanese didn't want to surrender in the spring and summer of 1945. They didn't want to surrender. They had been beaten on every front. They had almost no navy left. But the President Truman, a great man, not really widely recognized as his greatness, said to them, we've got something called an atom bomb. It's going to literally blow your country into little pieces. You might as well surrender now. We're not going to do anything bad to you. Just surrender, and we'll help you rebuild your country. And that's what happened. And we had an enormous, enormous leapfrog in the power and ability of the Japanese people to make their country a genuinely great country.
Ben, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there. Thank you very much. So much more to talk about, and I wish we had more time. Ben Stein, political and economic commentator, author, economist, great friend, first and foremost. Ben, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling, is more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention yours truly, Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now 1-800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Markets rally with the election results last night. President Trump winning the White House. The Dow 1,508 points to 43,730. Yep, you heard me, up 1,508 points to a record high close, 43,730. The S&P 500 also at a record high today of 146 points at 5,929. And the NASDAQ popped 544 points to 18,983. The yield on the 10-year note is up there at 4.43%. Gold pulling back today, down at the moment at 2,669 an ounce, and silver down 7 cents at 31.26 an ounce. This is an after-hours trading. Crypto's soaring. Bitcoin hitting all-time highs. Right now down about 400 at 75,825. Ethereum up 34 at 2,724. And Doge at 20 cents after hitting 21 cents overnight. The dollar firming against other currencies overseas. We're at 107 now versus the euro, 154.49 versus the yen, 129 versus the British pound, and 2011 versus the Mexican peso. Shares of DJT, the Donald J. Trump media company, moving up more than $2 at $35.96. NVIDIA soaring up nearly $6 at $145 and change. And now the latest news here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Dust is still settling following the election. Voters in Los Angeles sick of runaway crime impacting businesses, including out-of-control smash and grab, shoplifting, and the list goes on. Prop 36 was passed, reversing parts of Prop 47, and veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman has defeated incumbent District Attorney George Gascon. And, of course, in the presidential election, President Trump prevailed, and that's going to be impacting a lot of things related to the economy here. Let's bring in the giant on the local business scene now, Mark Wilbur, founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, head of Employers Group based here in Los Angeles, former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Mark Wilbur, thank you very much for taking the call here and give us your reaction to the big election yesterday and what this is going to mean for business here in the Los Angeles area.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me on, Frank. Yeah, yesterday brought some results I'm sure that surprised a lot of people, but for some of them, didn't surprise me at all. I mean, Gascon was soundly beaten. I mean, if this was Celebrity Apprentice, it would be you're fired. And then on top of that, Prop 36 passes at a 70%, affirmative rate, which is incredible. people are absolutely sick of the rampant crime. And that was delivered yesterday with a sledgehammer. And so, I think actually it should give our elected officials almost a mandate on its own to, do the right things as far as bringing police back. In 2014, when Prop 47 was put in place, which is what basically Prop 36 is essentially replacing, when that was brought in, Frank, they weren't defunding the police. There was a good economy. There were things happening at that time. And so, it was a different time. And then 2020 hits and, Prop 47 just caved in on itself with the defund the police movements. I don't know if you remember, Frank, there was one time you and I were talking, there was a guy who was arrested 4 times and let out in the same day in Beverly Hills because they couldn't actually hold him. It was the craziest thing. And actually, it wasn't Beverly Hills. It was, right next door to it in L.A. But it was such an underscore of what the problem is. Smash and grabs in Manhattan Beach, quiet little Manhattan Beach, full-on jewelry store smash and grabs. I mean, people have literally had it. From tip to toe in the state of California, people said enough is enough.
Right, and they don't put up with nonsense, certainly in Beverly Hills. And as a matter of fact, in some situations where somebody's watch was stolen, the authorities there actually went around George Gascon and went right to the federal prosecutors and prosecuted a watch thief for interference with commerce to make sure that whoever did that did get nailed and put away, and it worked. So those are the sort of things that have been happening under this current DA. But the veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman is scheduled to be with us on the air here 24 hours from now. So we're going to have a chance to speak with him more about this. So it certainly is going to be taking a different approach, and this reversal of at least parts of Prop 47 is also very significant. Among the movers and shakers you've been talking to in the business community here, are people pleased with these results?
With a lot of the results, they are. I mean, certainly measure Prop 32, formally putting more layers in place of continuing to increase the minimum wage, looks like that is going to finish at no, which thank goodness. I mean, I went to have a burger yesterday, a simple burger, Frank, nothing fancy, and, fast food. I was in a rush. I had no time. It was $9 for a burger. I mean, I was like, $9. That's almost an entree at a restaurant 10 years ago where you could sit down and be served. So people have kind of had it with that too. And I'm really glad that they put their foot down and said enough's enough and said no to the minimum wage. And I'm telling you, that would have just further hurt small businesses across the state dramatically. So I'm really glad that's coming in as a no.
Yep. Thanks for highlighting that one. And certainly President Trump's seen as going to be more business friendly than the current administration, especially on the tax front. And then, of course, now the Federal Reserve will be meeting again tomorrow, and we're expecting another rate cut. So a lot of things happening here at this critical moment that'll be impacting businesses. What's top of mind among the business folks you're talking to at the moment?
Well, just some business-friendly policies. I mean, people just feel under attack. The answer for the last 4 years has been just continue to raise taxes. You're getting to that point where you can't get lemonade from the Rhine, as my grandmother used to say. And, where there's only so much you can take from people, plus you throw on inflation, plus you throw on the impact of so many policies that are costing people because they ripple through the businesses. I mean, what is the business supposed to do? They have to pass along those costs to the consumers coming in. So, everything has just gotten so expensive. People are just barely getting by. And it's impacting people that I'm talking about, people who make good money. It's impacting people. I really am truly hoping that they address the SALT cap, which is the cap on state and local taxes. I would like to see that come back because people are really unfairly punished in places like California and New York and a few other states where, we've got states that because of the size of the populations, we're all paying a lot more taxes here, but yet with that cap on it, it really punishes us here. So I'm hoping that there's some relief to that as well.
All right, and certainly on the tax front must be a huge relief given the choices, or the Harris campaign basically had promised to raise taxes, and now with President Trump returning to office and the Senate and Republican control, it looks like the tax cuts that they got back in during the first administration will continue. So that's got to be a relief, right?
It's a huge relief because that puts a little more money in somebody's pocket to be able to help their family, to be able to go in and buy more things, whether it be food or consumables or services. And if you just continue taking money out of that into the government, that's not feeding the economy. And for whatever reason, Kamala just never could get that in her head. And so, promoting tax increases isn't going to fly. And I mean, she learned the hard way about that yesterday.
Mark, thank you very much for taking the call. Hope to speak with you again very, very soon. It'll be a lot to talk about, I'm sure. Mark WILBUR, founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, head of Employers Group, based here in Los Angeles, former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Fight on, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thanks so much, Frank. Have yourself a great evening. You
too. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, hey. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Look forward to celebrating very soon. And let's get out to the freeways now. 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Tesla stock soaring today as investors bet that the EV maker and its CEO Elon Musk will benefit from President Trump's return to the White House. Tesla standing to make significant gains under a Trump administration. A lot of discussion today on what President Trump's reelection will mean for EVs and EV mandates, as well as tariffs on foreign cars and other issues. This on a day in which the stock market soared, having its best day after Election Day performance in more than 100 years, with the Dow soaring 1,508 points to 43,730. All of the major stock market averages hit record highs. But some of the EV maker stocks did pull into reverse today, namely Rivian and Lucid, as President Trump gets set to take over. Let's discuss all of this now with our go-to car expert, Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast. Lauren Fix, thanks very much for taking the call. Your reaction to the big news here?
I was watching this whole thing myself. I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast.
Yep.
Watching, and one of the things you may not realize is that this is actually good for consumers. Whether you like President Trump or not, what he's going to do is take away the electric vehicle mandate. So if you wish to purchase an electric car, you should be able to buy one. And that's good for Tesla because, of course, he leads the whole market segment without much effort at all because he created that. And he also has the infrastructure for charging. So if you choose not to buy one of his vehicles, you'll probably be charging on one of his chargers if you want the level 2 charging. So there's all kinds of pluses for not just Tesla, whether they don't build the best electric car, they just happen to have a unique following for those who don't want to buy the normal way. So I see that there's going to be a big benefit. Some say, and I don't agree with this, that when they remove the $7,500 tax credit, that no one's going to buy Tesla. I don't think that's the case. He holds his own financing for leasing. So you could lease, you can buy used cars from them. And obviously, being the leader, they're going to benefit no matter what. On the other side of it, as far as other car brands, they're actually quite thrilled, even though they're not saying it out loud yet. But I still start to wonder how long will it take for the car manufacturers to cozy up to President Trump and make formal requests for him to abolish the EV mandate because they take a loss on every car. Now, we've discussed this, but when you're losing $44,000 on every single Ford Lightning truck, you probably don't want to make a lot of those. And they made them because they had to by the federal government. But when that EV mandate disappears, they'll still make them. They'll just make less of them. So for those that want them, they'll supply and demand. If I want bread and there's bread on the shelf, I'll buy it. If I don't want bread, then it sits on the shelf and rots. And that's exactly what's happening when it comes to the car brands.
On the Air Live with Lauren Fix. President Trump did win Michigan, by the way. home of Motown, flipping a key battleground state against Vice President Harris there. What is his reelection going to mean, you think, for Detroit?
It's actually good because what the union started to realize, maybe not the union leaders, but the union workers realized this is a problem. If we start making electric cars, that means we need 60% less of our workforce. And, maybe they're happy with the higher wages that the UAW president brought to them, but also the way it was handled did not make them happy. So I don't know how long Shawn Fain will remain as their leader, but we'll soon find that out. But in the meantime, this is really good for the workers. They'll make more money, and having the tax break that President Trump will now renew, that would mean that you're going to have more money in your pocket. Overtime isn't taxed. That's a huge plus. And if you're working with tips, again, they're not going to have taxes either. And we've heard other things also. Again, I don't know what will actually pass, but they're talking about, policemen, firemen, veterans, Social Security, all of that not being taxable on a federal level will be more money in your pockets. You can do the things you used to do. And everyone's really sick of everything being expensive, from gasoline to fill in the blank.
Yep. Right. Inflation still hitting hard, and financing also an issue. And a lot of people having trouble making their car payments nowadays. The Fed about to cut rates, we understand, again tomorrow by another 0.25 percentage point. So at least some possible relief coming on the borrowing front. Any updates on what's happening with car loans nowadays?
Right. I noticed that there's a lot of incentives out there, lower finance rates. I was actually just looking at that earlier today. I noticed that it's about 7% on used cars. I just want people to be aware that it doesn't take 24 hours once President Trump takes office. So that doesn't mean go out and buy a brand new car at a high interest rate and then find out you can't make the payments, because there's going to be a lot of changes. January 20th is when he takes over. Nothing's going to happen immediately. So keep in mind that until that time, which is still a few months out, that you should think about your finances, plan accordingly. It's going to take time to recollect some of the funds that you had to use to live on, and never spend more than 10% of your salary on a car. It's just not worth it.
All right, Lauren, thank you very much for taking the call on this big day here. Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on an epic day for the markets, with the Dow soaring more than 1,500 points. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. and TJ Jefferson bring their unique take on sports entertainment with no contest wrestling, with guests like Swerve Strickland.
Why do you use staples like sensu beans, man?
No, it was just something, the concept I came up with. It's an instrument used to punish. It was just finding those common items. If you see them, you automatically think back to me in that moment. So it's one of those things I wanted to just implement in like my whole character, being the most dangerous man in AEW.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network, wherever you listen.